This is Ty, your metalhead weatherman here. I hope you guys have had a great day and are having a great evening and night right now. Of course, we're gonna drop one more video, and maybe, depending on how the storm modes are, I might drop one more before the big part of the outbreak begins. There's a lot that plays into that. Really depends on my work day tomorrow. Before we get into this video, of course, I'm gonna ask if you like what I'm doing, like, comment, subscribe, and share the video. Definitely want to get the algorithm going so we can get this info out to people in these severe weather areas that need this, especially for those of us that don't have cable or streaming services. Sometimes YouTube's actually their only way to get these warnings out. So just like with me, and there's plenty other meteorologists on YouTube or weather geeks, whichever one you want to call them. Doesn't matter to me. Yeah, we're just trying to do our part here. That being said, enough rambling. We're going to get into it. Not too much has really changed in regards to the risk here. Monday is still an enhanced risk, and Tuesday is still a moderate risk for severe thunderstorms. Most likely going to be a severe weather outbreak. Strong to violent tornadoes are very well possible. One thing that I do want to go over with Monday's risk is we're actually going to go to the NAM 3 kilometer real quick. We're getting an up close and personal view of the south central US here, especially Texas. So we're going to move forward here. And I want you to take notice of something. Right around 11 and 1 o'clock, you can see what looks to be a little bit rain showers and thunderstorms starting to develop and continually developing up until later into the evening, where our severe weather threat is going to be the highest. Now, the reason I'm making mention of this is this could actually become a saving grace as far as the tornado threat's concerned, but this is also a double-edged sword. See, with the tornado threat, you kind of want more discrete, isolated supercells. You want a little less cloud cover. This will bring a lot of cloud cover. This will bring a lot of rain. This could cool the temperatures down and lower some of the potential energy that's available around this area, which is what we would need if we're looking for strong to violent tornadoes, which would be more than likely associated with isolated supercells, more isolated discrete supercells, I should say. So as we move along here, even as the storms really start to develop and intensify, it's very messy. There's a lot of small cells almost kind of forming a boundary in a sense, especially around here where I'm highlighting with my cursor. So as we move further and further forward, dry line finally starts to kick in, runs into that moist air, and there's our storms here. And then we watch these move off, form into a line overnight and into Tuesday. Now, even if the tornado threat diminishes, the double-edged sword, the real kicker in this is the flood threat. And because with this, now we have the potential for thunderstorms to be training, which is thunderstorm after thunderstorm moving over the same area. So these are still going to be supercells, embedded supercells. These are still going to be strong thunderstorms. They're going to drop intense rainfall, very high rainfall rates. And my concern is towards the eastern part of Texas, western Louisiana, and the southwest corner of Arkansas in particular. I think that there are a lot of people here that could be in line for some potentially not catastrophic flooding, but definitely some considerable flooding. So we're going to but now that we've gone over that, we're going to keep moving here. We watch this form to a small quasi-linear type of deal early on. And then my real concern is when we get to this area here, I really want to watch for I would really be watching for supercells that form ahead of this line of storms here. Anything that forms in this area because I do think there's going to be moments where the sun will be out and we will have the temperatures go up around this area here in southern Mississippi and eastern Louisiana. I think that becomes a hotbed for isolated, discrete supercells, which will have the potential to produce stronger to more violent tornadoes. And you start to see that here. Oops. Didn't mean to pull up the sounding. I will actually in a second. But we can look here and we can see what looks to be some discrete supercells starting to form here, which is alarming because with the kinematics and thermodynamics that we've gone over earlier today around here, the threat for tornadoes is really high around here. These could spin up and be potentially long track, be very violent. Some could be above the EF2 rating, which would cause some considerable to severe damage. And it could still happen here, but the threat is definitely higher here. So regardless of which area you're in, whether you have the threat on Monday or Tuesday, definitely have a way to get warnings at night. And definitely have a way to get some kind of severe weather coverage. If you don't have cable or streaming service, there's plenty of guys on YouTube that do live streams and keep you up to date on all the latest severe weather warnings and changing conditions. Guys like Ryan Hall and Direct Weather and many others. You just look for them. If you just look for them, you'll find them. I can guarantee you that. Enough rambling here. We're going to go to the end of this model run. And the severe weather threat goes into the overnight for Mississippi as well. So you're going to get multiple. So scenario is most likely going to be that eastern Louisiana and southern and central Mississippi, you're going to get multiple rounds of severe weather, probably from the early afternoon into the evening and into the late night hours. And then by early morning, this is just about moved out. Excuse me. So we're gonna take a look at some of the parameters one more time. I'll try to make this a little bit quicker. I do feel a little bit more optimistic. My computer's been responding better today. I think it just kind of had those little early morning kind of grunts. So waiting for this to load, and I'm hoping I haven't spoken too soon. Okay, it's starting to load here. So I'm gonna try to inch forward with this. And you can, even into the overnight, you can kind of see the low-level jets starting to build up here. And you're seeing readings of about 80, 90 knots plus, 90 knots even in some spots. So, yeah, I'm just going to look at the legend here. Yeah, you're definitely looking at some spots where there could be winds of up to 70, 80 knots even. So as we move further and further forward, this treks off to the east. And I do think that there could be a potential for a few of these storms that are supposed to be forming up in what a lot of the weather community calls crapvection, that mess of rain and whatnot. I do think one of these has the opportunity to pull severe, but I think the Cape is going to be limited, which will inhibit a lot of earlier development. And there's so many storms in the area, it's going to be hard for them to really get their act together, organize, and become discreet and produce tornadoes. Not impossible though, so definitely be on the lookout. The last thing you want is to be blindsided by a storm that you weren't expecting. So as we move further and further along here, we're watching this energy roll off to the east. It doesn't lose a lot of steam. If anything, later into the day, we're seeing wind maximums and jet streaks around Mississippi and Louisiana right around the time those storms are really starting to kick in. By about 8 or 9 o'clock, that's when the lower level jet is really starting to scream. Usually between the hours of 6 and 9, during a severe weather outbreak, the lower level jet really starts to jump off, and that's when the tornado threat tends to really skyrocket. So We watch this move along, and even then, even through me doing this loop here, you can actually see where the low is. You can see it spinning. How about that? And then by Wednesday, it's moving off to the east. There is a severe weather threat for Wednesday, and we are going to go over that. We didn't go over that much earlier today, so we're going to do that. This might be a longer video as a result, but I do want to get this information out there. But actually, right before I do that, I'm going to take a look at the Cape one more time. We're going to take a look at the mixed layer, and we're going to take a look at the significant tornado parameter for Monday and Tuesday. And then after that, we're going to look at Wednesday, and then we're going to talk a little bit about the flood risk, and then we're probably going to be done after that. So I'm going to move along here. I'm going to watch this Cape start to really roll in, and that's why I was a little bit uncertain about maybe some potential severe weather firing off early, because look, there's not really enough Cape for this to work with just yet. I do think it's time, but like I said, as time goes on, these Cape values really start to jump off into the late evening and overnight hours. We're talking about potential readings of about maybe 2,000 joules, maybe even 2,500 in some spots. So we're going to take a look at a sounding now. And you can even see here that the probable hazard type is tornado. And then you can also see that this, like you can see right here, this green line is actually a dew point, is actually our dew points, and the red line is our temperatures. When you see them close together, there's a lot of convection, there's a lot of moisture in the air. When you see them spaced out like this, there is some dry air aloft, which is actually a telltale sign that with that dry air aloft, it's really helpful in the genesis of tornadoes. Sometimes you want to see this a little bit higher up for the more violent tornadoes, if that's what you're looking for. But a tornado is still possible. I'm going to show you a sample from Tuesday's severe weather outbreak, and that's really going to become, and then you'll see the difference. You'll see what I'm talking about in a minute. Capes are but there is definitely plenty of Cape. There's, according to this actually shows about 3,000, more than sufficient enough to support severe weather of all hazard types. So as we move further and further forward, as the storm system moves off to the east, so does the Cape. Early morning hours, you don't have the peak heating of the day, so the Cape values are going to be lower. But watch this. Once we get to about 15Z, which is going to be about 1, 2 o'clock, early afternoon type of deal. That's a little bit strange. It's actually showing lower Cape values. I do think this might be underdone here. It would be nice if this is true though, because that could limit our tornado threat. But we're still looking at values of about 1,500 to maybe even 2,000. So, I mean, the less Cape we have, the better. But this is still more than sufficient enough for severe weather, unfortunately. So I don't think this changes a lot of things. So we'll take a look at, we'll also take a look at the lapse rates now, because I'm kind of curious as to what the hail threat will be like. A lot of areas were already outlined for large hail, and you can kind of see right here, there's already a little bit of dry air there, and then there's a little bit more moist air here. So we've been seeing that depicted on our temperature models for a minute here. So yeah, well, I didn't mean to go that far ahead, but all right. Yeah, I'm gonna get a mouse soon. I'm probably gonna put an order in for one this week. But if we look towards right around late morning into the early afternoon hours, you can tell that there's some really high lapse rates, almost maxed out in some spots. So as we move further and further forward, we still have plenty of lapse. We still have very high lapse rates. This is a very favorable setup for hail and tornadoes. Like I was depicting earlier through our sounding. Threat kind of diminishes for hail just a little bit. Lapse rates aren't quite as high as yesterday because we're a little bit further away from that dry air. But there's still plenty of opportunities to get some large hail, maybe even baseball size or bigger on Tuesday as well. So as we move forward here, we're going to look at the significant tornado parameter, and then we're going to move to Wednesday. Now, I want to say this right now, that this doesn't necessarily say, oh, I'm doomed to see a strong tornado. It says the potential is there. It does not guarantee anything. We can't even guarantee where tornadoes are going to strike. I wish we were that far along, but that's not the case. Not yet. I do believe that we're inching closer to that. When that will actually be the case, I don't know. But you can see that we definitely have some high numbers here. We have some 3s, some 4s, and maybe even a 4.5 to a 5. We're not maxing out just yet, but we're getting up there. So we look at this and we watch it move further off to the east. Kind of dies off a little bit early in the day, and then by about 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, we're starting to increase again. And then look at this. We're starting to get into the 5s, maybe even some 6s here in some spots. Take a little sampling of this. This is something I want. This is what I was talking about earlier. So it even says it right here. Probable hazard type, tornado. I remember one meteorologist talking about this vaguely in detail, but they were saying something about, if you see these, I'm not sure what this is, but if you see something about this critical angle swirling around like this, the threat tends to lean more towards tornadoes. But what I do know is that we have plenty of convection, but in the higher levels, we do have a slightly higher lapse rate, up into the 500 to 200 millibar area. That's something that you look for when it comes to tornado genesis, or potential tornado genesis. This hasn't happened yet, of course. I'm trying not to get ahead of myself. So as we move further and further forward, I've done it again. Go back. This energy, of course, is going to move off to the east. Mississippi, you're in play for some of this. The significant tornado parameter does go down, but it does keep a lot of its higher values into the late night hours, which is really concerning, especially towards the Gulf Coast. That doesn't surprise me, however, because that's where you're going to have the most rich moisture, and there's still going to be plenty of wind energy around here. This wind energy is going to linger for a while, and even all those of us that are in the Wednesday threat, you guys are still in play, and I think there's still a tornado threat for you guys even. And there's still a lot of uncertainties as to how severe it will be. So that being said, we're going to move up to the 60-hour mark, and we're actually going to take this to the southeast region, actually, before we do anything else. Should have had this set up earlier. Come on now. Okay, there we go. I had a little brain fart there. Didn't really think that through. So now I gotta load this again, which is fine. Just waiting. We'll just wait for it to get past the 60-hour mark, and then we'll go from there. If it'll load. Here we go again with my mouse. Okay, so this is the Euro model. It's a little bit more of a long-range model, so you're not going to get the same kind of definition that you would get with a short-range model like the NAM or the HRRR, which updates every few hours. This updates about every 6 hours. So we're watching these storms move through Alabama by 6. It's an early morning severe weather threat for a lot of you guys in Birmingham and Montgomery, Mobile. And then by about 9 o'clock, this is knocking on outdoor in Atlanta, and then off to the south in Macon, Columbus. You guys are in that slight risk area. So I do think that there is a potential for some embedded supercells. Still hard to see because this, like I said, this is a short range model. Even though this is a higher res version of the European model, there's still a lot that's unclear to me right now. One thing that I did see that was troubling earlier when I was looking at forecast models, though, was I saw, I did still see temperatures that were near the 70s. So, and dew points near the mid to upper 60s. It's still sufficient enough to spark off severe weather. So, man, I don't know why the temperature model loads so much faster than everything else. It's kind of annoying, but it just shows that I need to use that more. So, we're in the mid 60s around Atlanta during the time the severe weather is expected to roll through. But over towards the south, we're getting closer and closer to that 70-degree mark. And that's key to what lies ahead. If these temperatures continue to uptick, that could be a huge problem. But here's where I really get concerned. Right towards the coast, look at these temperatures. We're getting towards the upper 70s and maybe a couple spots on the coast hitting 80 ahead of the severe weather. That's alarming. That's very alarming, actually. These temperatures spiking up like that before severe weather comes, and that means that there's going to be a lot more energy available. These storms feed off warm air and moisture. And being close to the coast, I expect the dew points to be higher. So let's take a look at that real quick. I'm already starting to get a little bit concerned here. Could be quite a severe risk beginning to develop for Wednesday as well. I mean, they had already issued a slight risk about 6 days ahead of this event, so that has to mean something. So what we can see here now is 6 o'clock. Again, Montgomery and Birmingham, areas in Alabama. You guys will definitely still be in line for some severe weather. Slightly limited in strength compared to what's expected for Mississippian areas off to the west, but the threat is still there, and this still has time to uptick, so this is definitely something to be on guard for. Just because you aren't under enhanced or moderate risk doesn't mean things still can't get nasty. So as we move further and further forward, as this complex of storms moves further and further east, dew points go ahead with it. And over towards the south, the area of concern highlighted by the National Weather Service and Storm Prediction Center, we have dew points that are in the mid 60s, in some areas even 70. So definitely be careful on Wednesday as well. You don't want to get caught off guard by this, because these are some nasty storms from the looks of it. Are going to be some nasty storms if this holds true. This could also downtrend. I don't want to make it all sound doom and gloom, but sometimes it's hard to tell, but this is the kind of situation where you can easily see things uptrend, and all I've seen this do is uptrend so far, so I'm not seeing too many reasons as to why it shouldn't, unfortunately, right now. So we're watching these dew points into the 70s, and it makes its way to the coast, of course, as I was expecting. See some areas towards South Georgia and maybe even just north of Jacksonville where we're getting dew points into the 70s, maybe even to closer towards the lower 70s, mid 70s. Very alarming stuff here. And I haven't forgotten about all of you in the coast of North Carolina, even central North Carolina. You're in play for this. South Carolina, Charleston, Columbia, Greenville. You're in this too, so definitely be weather aware. this even expands a little bit into the northeastern parts of the U.S. Virginia, you're in play. Maybe Washington D.C. Maybe just a little bit south of there. You guys are in play. We're gonna move this further and further along, and we're gonna watch this all move offshore by Thursday afternoon. Dew points will be up for a little bit, and then it's gonna be very windy after the fact. So we're gonna go back a little bit. Take a look at the lower level jet again for Wednesday. Once this thing loads, I'll wait for it to pick up. So while I'm waiting for this to load, actually, I think it's going to be a good time to take a quick look at the flood risk. So while I'm waiting for that to load, oh man, I might have messed up here. Because now this isn't loading. Wait a minute. All right. Okay, there we go. So I was talking earlier about the high rainfall risk and the risk of storms training over this area. The National Weather Service has seen this, and there's a slight risk for areas towards south central and southwestern Arkansas, eastern Texas, and northwestern Louisiana. And then there's a moderate risk for flooding, excessive rainfall around eastern Texas and northwest Louisiana. Not a surprise there. And then on day 3, the risk moves right over to the area where we have more severe weather and and I even stated earlier, multiple rounds of thunderstorms. Tornadoes and hail and straight line winds aren't going to be the only threat. Flood threat is definitely high, and this slight risk even reaches into areas of western Kentucky. Nashville, you have a slight risk for some excessive rainfall, maybe even some flooding. We've had a few storm systems roll through in the last couple of weeks, so ground is saturated, so there is a risk for flooding. Definitely be watchful if you're on the roads, if you're in low-lying areas in particular. And remember the slogan, turn around, don't drown. You may think it sounds corny, but it might save your life. So, that being said, just stay weather aware. Alright, so now that this is loaded, we can get back to that, and I decided to go back like an idiot. That being said, so we still have plenty of wind energy available. Wind shear doesn't look like, the shear profile doesn't look exactly like what it would on Tuesday. So the tornado threat definitely seems to decrease slightly. I do, however, think that we're going to get a little bit of a jet streak here around south central and southern Georgia towards the panhandle of Florida during the early morning and afternoon hours, and this could lead to a marginal to maybe even substantial tornado threat. And this could, like I said, this could also uptick. And then maybe even a little bit further out ahead of the line of storms, there could also be a few discrete supercells that might form here around the coast of South Carolina and North Carolina, Charleston, Greenville. You guys, Charleston and then Greenville towards central South Carolina, you guys definitely need to be watching out for this. So we watch this move further and further forward, start to lose a little bit of wind energy in this region. It heads up towards North Carolina and towards Virginia, and I think this is where you guys will have your severe threat, will be later into Wednesday. And then by Thursday, all of this will have moved out. We'll be left with a little bit of wind energy, but not quite as much as we have in previous storm systems. It'll be a little blustery for a bit. It'll quickly die out. So, that being said, let's take a look at the Cape real quick, and then we'll be out of here. Excuse me, I'm with family right now, and they're watching American Idol, I think. So, if you hear them in the background, I apologize. Alright, so waiting for this to load one more time. So we're watching the Cape. We're looking at the Cape values. And I do see some areas where it's about 500. Still a little bit of a limiting factor for severe weather, but we could reach some areas that get 1,000, especially towards the southern tip of this line of storms that we're expecting. So right around here. But it is alarming though that we're still 3 days out, and this is a long range model. Longer range models are also known for not picking up on the Cape values quite the same as short range models. It's not quite as accurate, but we do definitely have areas where there's a bigger area where there's 1,000 joules per kilogram, especially on the eastern and southeastern parts of Georgia heading into South Carolina. So there's definitely a threat for severe weather still on Wednesday and into early Thursday morning. While this quickly moves off, this still shouldn't be anything to be taken lightly, especially on the more nocturnal end of things. You don't want to get caught by any sort of tornado at night. So anyone that has a NOAA weather radio or a phone, just make sure that's set up so that way you can get warnings, so that way you can get woken up, because tornado sirens are not meant for you to hear at night. They're not meant to wake you up from your sleep. I do want you to keep that in mind. So definitely keep a close eye on your weather over these next 3 days if you're under an area for severe weather or flooding. But that's all I got for you guys today. Sorry if this was a lengthy video as well. This was a lot to talk about. This has been Ty, your Metalhead Weatherman. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your evening. Good night and stay metal.